After a long pause, Jockey continued, Mengji helped me onto his canoe and we paddled upstream. Bashu's canoe stayed close to ours. I couldn't talk to her, so we just smiled at each other. Their paddling skills were incredible, so the canoe moved swiftly. Soon, we reached a cliff by the river, covered with caves. Everyone was singing beautiful mountain songs, but suddenly, the singing stopped. I realized we had reached a narrow crack in the mountain. It was so tight only one canoe could pass through at a time. The river flowed into it, creating a strong current at the entrance. The current was so strong that once the canoe was lined up with the crack, it was swept straight in. Inside the crack, it was completely dark, a long, winding passage. No one spoke. The only sound was the water, and the canoe didn't need paddling. The current carried us along. After about 20 minutes, the darkness suddenly cleared. We came out from the crack. When I saw the scene before me, I was stunned. I couldn't believe such a beautiful place existed. The canoe glided into a large lake, its calm surface reflecting moonlight like a sea of silver. On the lake shore, I saw houses unique, with sharply pointed roofs and high stilts, raised above the ground. Each had a long ladder leading up. Drumbeats echoed, likely some kind of signal. Then countless torches appeared as dozens of canoes approached from the opposite shore. They all welcomed me. I later learned the Akimeng clan respected private property more than we could imagine. After what happened on the river, I could have claimed the binoculars were a priceless treasure. Since Bahu lost them, I could have demanded a lot of money or even claimed her as a servant, and she couldn't have refused. But I generously let it go, and since Bashu was the daughter of their most important member, their grand welcome made sense. I was led ashore, where I first met the golden-haired strange man. I nearly fell over laughing. I never dreamed their strange man wasn't some ancient monster, but a civilized person. Professor Pinner, the famous Swedish biologist and international expert on bacteria who disappeared in China 5 or 6 years ago. Several university textbooks were written by him. But it's unfair to say Mengji's description was wrong. He just described a well-known person with great detail. The professor had golden hair, green eyes, and even in moonlight, his fine golden body hair shimmered. His nose was high, his skin pale, a typical Nordic man. For a young Miao person who had only known this region, not seeing a European as a man-eating monster was already impressive. Professor Pinner was thrilled to see me, patting my shoulder warmly. His English had a strong Nordic accent. He kept talking, but after a few minutes, he was interrupted. 20 or so young men and women led me to the largest house. I didn't understand what they intended until Mengji pushed through the crowd and whispered, "You should meet my father." It was a reasonable request. Clearly, Mengji and Bashu's father was the clan leader. I nodded. Mengji added, "You must go in alone. It's a rare honor." I smiled and approached the house. The door was woven from thin grass, tightly bound. As I reached to push it open, I heard Professor Pinner shout, "For God's sake, don't go in." Jockey stopped, burying his face in his hands. I knew he was remembering something painful, so I didn't pressure him. What happened next in that mysterious place was beyond my imagination, so I didn't know what to ask. After a long pause, he continued, I froze, unsure why Pinner shouted that. I looked back, but the crowd behind me had started singing and dancing. I couldn't see him or hear him anymore. If only I'd listened and not pushed that door open. He sighed. But I was completely fascinated by how strange it all was. I didn't even think about Pinner's warning. I pushed the door and stepped inside. The door looked weak, but its thickness blocked out sound perfectly. Once I closed it, I heard nothing. The room was so dark I could barely see at first. Out of respect, I stood still until my eyes adjusted. As I stood there, a strange smell hit me, a mix of sweet smells and something fishy. It made me feel like I was in an alien world, surrounded by mysteries I couldn't understand. Soon, my eyes got used to the dimness. In the center of the room, an old man sat cross-legged on the floor. I assumed he was Mengji and Bashu's father. I was thinking of how to greet him properly when I noticed something, a string of 6 or 7 3-inch long, bright red scorpions crawling on his bare chest. Their hooked tails were raised high. As a biology student, I knew one sting from those deadly creatures could kill even the strongest man in 30 seconds. I was so terrified I couldn't speak. Then I felt an itch on the back of my hand. I looked down and nearly screamed. Somehow, a black spider covered in purple-black fur had crawled onto my hand. One look told me it was one of the world's most poisonous spiders. I had come to this region partly to find such a sample, but having it on my hand was anything but pleasant. I stood frozen, shaking. The old man smiled, leaned forward, and brushed the spider off my hand with a feather broom. It quickly moved to him, climbing onto his knee, then his body, settling under his ribs like it was returning to its nest. I felt dizzy. Forget manners, I pulled the door open and practically fell down the ladder. When I reached the ground, Meng-ji rushed over, asking, "What did my father do to you?" Gasping, I said, He seemed to put a spider on my hand." I'm not sure if I said it right, because I only saw the spider crawl back to him, not come from him. But when I said that, Meng-ji cheered, shouting something I didn't understand. Everyone else joined in, their cheers very loud. Bashu was pushed forward, clearly dressed up for the occasion. Her head was decorated with small white flowers that gave off a strange, sweet smell, making her look even more like a fairy. She was led to my side, and Meng-ji shouted, "You've been accepted as one of our clan. Father has approved your marriage to Bashu." That's when it hit me, marriage to Bashu? I hadn't asked her to marry me. Wasn't this all too silly? I wanted to object, but that night, the moonlight was so bright, Bashu so beautiful, and the clan singing and dancing so enthusiastic. I couldn't resist the temptation. After a moment's shock, I didn't argue. I just pulled Bashu into my arms. Many people kept asking me to drink a sweet, strong wine. It was a wild moment. As I drank, Bashu and I ran off together. At the time, I wasn't thinking about marrying her. It felt like a short romantic adventure. Bashu was stunning, but marrying her, impossible to imagine. As she lay in my arms, I was already thinking about how jealous everyone in Shanghai would be when I told them about this short affair. Jockey paused, giving me a bitter smile. If I really can't be saved, it's fair. Don't cruel playboys always get what they deserve? But from start to finish, I never loved her. I didn't love her at all. I wanted to scold him, to ask why he didn't reject her immediately if he didn't love her. But I held back. I understood how he thought. His story painted a clear picture. What young man could resist the charm of a half-naked meow girl? And as Jockey said, he thought it was just a quick affair, something he could leave, with no lasting TIs. Jockey shook his head hard. 7 days passed like that. I thought of Professor Pinner and wanted to see him, but he had disappeared somewhere. Then I remembered my sample collection team. I told Meng-ji and Bashu I had to leave, but when I said that, they just shook their heads. It made me very angry. In the end, I left without saying goodbye, slipping out through another crack's fast water. As soon as I came out onto the river, Meng-ji caught up. He begged me to go back. I refused, of course. Finally, he said, "If you must leave, fine, but know this, our clan is very good at goo. My father, Bashu, and I are masters of it. You can't stay away for more than a year, and since you've married Bashu, you can't marry anyone else." I dismissed it as empty threats. I told him I was from a modern society, and living in their old-fashioned region was impossible. Meng-ji ignored me, saying, "Bashu allows you 1 year. You must return within that time. If you don't, you'll go mad. The madness will start after 6 months, happening every 10 days or so, then more often until you're completely insane. But if you dare marry another, you'll die a horrible death the morning after your wedding." He spoke with such certainty, as if it were definitely true. Fearing a group of people might force me back, I pretended to agree, saying I'd go home to sort things out and might return to stay. That night, I reached our camp and forced the local guide to start the journey immediately. A few days later, we were far from the Miao region. When people asked where I'd been, I said I'd gotten lost. I never told anyone about those days. I tried to forget it myself, but Jockey couldn't continue. He didn't need to. I could guess what came next. He hadn't taken Meng-ji's words seriously, but now, they were coming true. I was beyond shocked by his story. It was too unbelievable. Could goo really exist? Were there people so skilled in it that they could drive someone mad or kill them for not doing what they wanted? If so, what was goo? What kind of power was it? From Jockey's condition, it seemed he had been cursed with goo, slowly becoming mad. But was that really the case? My mind was a mess. After a long pause, I said, "Jockey, rest for now. I'll drive. Once we're in Shanghai, we'll find excellent doctors for mental problems to figure this out." He gave a bitter laugh. Even now, I don't believe Meng Ji's nonsense. I'm perfectly fine. There's no such thing as mysterious powers. I switched places with Jockey, taking the wheel, and asked, "So, what did Meng Ji and his father say to you after they found you?" "You heard most of it," he replied. "They want me to go back with them. They kept saying if I marry someone else, I'm as good as dead. They don't want me to die, but they say Bashu's goo is on me, and they can't undo it." I said, "This is getting weirder by the minute. I don't believe a word of it, and I'm glad you don't either, Jockey." He smiled, relieved. "That's why we're best friends." I'd mentioned before we were both so young back then. In our youthful minds, we had a simple belief that human science could explain everything. If something couldn't be explained by science, we thought it was not scientific, impossible, or fake. It wasn't until years later, after many experiences, that I realized when science fails to explain something, it's because human knowledge is still too limited, our science too basic. Sadly, by the time I understood this, it was far too late, so long that even sadness felt dull.